Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. A couple weeks ago, it may have been a couple months ago, I can't remember, I made a video regarding how an avoidant treats you if you're the one versus if you're not, right? And recently, I've been getting a lot of comments that you guys are still asking more about this topic. So we're going to make something very similar. We're just trying to figure out, are you a placeholder? Are you the person that they actually love and they're going to commit to? This is tricky because sometimes the person you're with is not an avoidant, but it's just somebody who's putting you on the back burner. And then other times the person is an avoidant and they do love you, but you think you're a placeholder because there's not enough love from your perspective because they withhold love. Not on purpose, but that's what it feels like. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that so you guys can understand your own relationship, kind of dissect those variables that's going on so you can have a little bit more of an idea where you stand with this person and what to do next, right? So the first one we're going to talk about is how an avoidant, if they love you, versus if you're like a distraction or a placeholder, how they behave when it comes to honesty, okay? And this is just, it really depends. Even if you have all of these traits of being a placeholder, you might be the person they love. So please take this with a grain of salt. Every video I make, grain of salt, please. But today, let's start with the first one, honesty, as we talked about. This one is not always a case with fearful avoidance. So keep that in mind. If an avoidant loves you and values you, they will probably be honest with you, even if they're uncomfortable doing so. But they typically will mention verbally, if you ask them, that they give you honesty even if you're not happy with the answer because they respect you. They might even say, I'm honest with you even when it disappoints you because I respect you, okay? And a lot of times with an anxious preoccupied, they sometimes feel, if you're the anxious preoccupied and your partner's dismissive avoidant, for example, they might feel like, well, why can't you just tell me what I want to hear? Why can't you just try, right? That's their perspective. But an avoidant says, no, I really can't give you that right now. And it feels very blunt and hurtful because they almost feel like the avoidant is not trying. But what the avoidant is trying to do is say, if I say something that I don't really fully mean yet or I'm not ready for, and I, pull the carpet under the rug from under you, one day you're going to hate me, you're not going to love me, you're going to leave me, and I'm going to be a bad guy. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to give you as honest as possible, even if it hurts, even if it might be a little bit more negative, because I don't want to get your hopes up. That's usually how avoidants respond to honesty. Like I said, not with fearful avoidance. And we'll talk about more fearful avoidance in a little bit. But in general, that's how avoidants act if they love you. Now, if they're see you as a placeholder, or maybe they're not even avoidant, not fearful avoidance though, they might lie just to not rock the boat, right? That's something that they might do. Or they might lie just because they want you to stop talking, which is even scarier. Fearful avoidance, the reason why this is not the case for them is some fearful avoidance do lie. I don't want to say lying is a good thing, but sometimes fearful avoidants lie because they love you, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they're afraid that if they hurt your feelings, you'll abandon them, and then they lose you. Right? So fearful avoidance, their wound of abandonment is very prominent. Even if they lean dismissive, a lot of them, abandonment is still very deeply within them. Whereas dismissive avoidance, abandonment is there, but abandonment is not as prominent as failure, right? So in avoidant, when they say, I'm honest with you, and it's because I respect you, if you abandon them or leave them because they were honest, at least they know they didn't fail you. Right? They didn't fail you. But if they were honest or they tried and they said, yeah, it's okay, we can get married in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years. And then when that time comes, they can't do it, or they feel like they need more time. Now they failed you. And if you leave them then you left them because they're a failure. Whereas if they were honest, you left them even if they were not a failure. They succeeded, at least they feel like they did good by you because they were honest, okay? Sounds a little confusing, but that's the reality. Fearful avoidance, they don't have that wound as prominently. Especially if they lean anxious, they are more concerned about the fact that if you're leaving or not, right? And so by them lying, sometimes at least they get to keep you around. And maybe later they can try their very hardest and satisfy you at that point. That's what they feel, okay? The next one is conflict. How do they behave in conflict? When an avoidant loves you, instead of shutting down, they may shut down, but it's a little different. Usually you can see an emotion. They're going to be irritated or angry sometimes. They may shut down, but you can still see there's a sign of emotion. And that emotion is a sign of emotional investment in the relationship. They may avoid conflict, but it's because they are trying to avoid the overwhelming feelings that they have, not disinterest. Whereas somebody who's sees you as a distraction or a placeholder, or they're not even an avoidant, they may act very nonchalant about it. They may say, okay, whatever, or I hear you, doesn't really matter, or I think you're just being too much, or being too, you're being too emotional. And some avoidants do say that. And so that's why it can be tricky. But when you keep pushing, an avoidant will show that emotion. Whereas somebody who's they perceive you as a placeholder, or they're not an avoidant, the pushingness is not going to make them get irritated or completely crash out. I'm not saying you deserve to be crashed out at. That's the difference, okay? The next one is recognition, okay? When an avoidant loves someone, they do typically at one point outwardly ask for recognition, right? Is that not enough? Do you not see how much I do for you? Even if they're angry, they're going to feel that way. How do you not see how hard I work? Like, am I not doing enough? Do you not like me? What's going on? They're going to have that thought, and they're going to say it at one point out loud to you. Now, if they perceive you as a placeholder, they don't require recognition from you because there's no emotional attachment. You're never going to hear that. It doesn't matter to them, right? That's a huge sign, because avoidants are very attached to that recognition piece, okay? The next one is awareness, okay? Avoidants who love you are more aware of your moods and feelings, even just your preferences. They know that at a restaurant, you're going to always order at the soup and salad section. They just know that about you, okay? They may even order for you. Maybe you don't like that, but it's because they know your preference so well. They're so comfortable. It's almost blended in their life. They know what you like to do. They know your timing. They know your day-to-day, right? Whereas if you're a placeholder, they may forget about details about you that even your colleague might know about you, okay? The next one is change. Now, this one is only for long-term relationships, okay? When an avoidant loves you, they at least are trying. They admit they're working on trying. Avoidants, like we said, they don't like to fail you, so they're not going to say straight up, hey, I'm going to, marry you in 3 years, I promise. I want to commit to that. They don't want to say that, because if they don't, you're going to get mad at them, you're going to leave them, and they failed, right? But they're going to try and get there. Even if they don't show it in the most romantic way, they might even say, like, stop pressuring me. That's what I'm trying. I'm really trying, right? But they're still saying I'm trying. It's there somewhere. They may even have a hard time admitting it, but usually when they get backed up in a corner, it might show up. But in general, their actions reflect as well. There's progress. The next one with the placeholder in terms of change, they actually may have no problem promising change. Whereas avoidance, promising change, it's like much harder. But their action is kind of showing it. Avoidants are like, I don't want to give you like a straight up concrete offering, I'm going to change in 3 years and we're going to get married. You'll see, right? Sometimes they may get mad and say that, but usually the verbal is harder for them to say, but there's a little bit of actions that's leading to that. Whereas if you're a placeholder, they might be really comfortable. Yeah, don't worry, we're going to have kids. And then as soon as you're about to have that, they disappear, or there's no action, right? Now, a lot of people might think avoidants do this. Not as often. Avoidants typically, they're not going to say something they're going to do and then completely not do it or disappear. Sometimes that happens. It does happen. So it's very dependent. But more often than not, if the relationship is overall stable, usually their actions are stronger than their words, whereas a placeholder, the words are more stronger than their actions, okay? Communication. Now, this one is a part that's a little bit more particular for fearful avoidance, right? The first one we said was more particular for dismissive avoidance. This one is more particular with fearful avoidance, okay? With love, okay? So we're talking about the communication. If an avoidant loves you, they speak up more and start expressing things that make them uncomfortable. Fearful avoidants don't really like admitting when they're uncomfortable about things. They might lie, they might placate, they might hide how they really feel because they don't want you upset. And if you're upset, you'll leave, right? Dismissive avoidants are a little bit more comfortable being very blunt, to the point where it might be quite offensive, and they need to work on that part. But fearful avoidance, they're like more quiet about it, right? And so they slowly start expressing things. They might say, hey, actually, you know what? I never really liked horror movies. You just like them. And so sometimes I like to watch them, but they actually make me uncomfortable sometimes. Can we watch something a little bit more, relaxed? I actually like comedy. So they're a little bit more open. It might even be small things like that, right? Whereas dismissive avoidance, typically they just watch what they want and then they expect you to go along with them, which is also not fair. But these are the differences, okay? Whereas a placeholder, if they perceive you as a placeholder, they don't show interest in opening up or even telling you how they feel or not. Whether or not they open up to you, that's their choice, but they don't care to give that to you, okay? So these are some of the ways that an avoidant treats you if they love you, or if you're a placeholder. Let's summarize. With honesty, this is pretty much only for dismissive avoidance. Avoidants who love you tend to be more honest, whereas if you're a placeholder, they tend to lean towards lying to you just because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't care to invest. Conflict avoidants tend to show some emotion within the conflict, whereas if you're a placeholder, there tends to be little to no emotion and no regard to trying to figure this out, right? Recognition. Avoidants, if they love you, they want recognition, whereas if you're a placeholder, they don't really care. Awareness. Avoidants that love you are more aware of your moods, whereas if you're a placeholder, they forget details about you. They don't really think about your moods. They don't understand who you are. A colleague might know you better, okay? Change only for long-term relationships. Avoidants tend to, even if they don't verbally admit it right away, they are trying to work on change if they love you, even a little bit. Whereas a placeholder, they may promise a huge amount of change and there is no action, okay? The next one is communication. This one is just more particular for fearful avoidance. If they love you, they're going to slowly open up about things that make them uncomfortable or their values or truth. Whereas if you're a placeholder, they don't want to, okay? I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.